Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, everything is okay. So today I will talk about, after the introduction to my courses, I will talk about for the chapter 1, bioethics and law, and within the European Union integration. And I will talk about the connection of bioethics with the health policy of the European Union. So, the incorporation of public health policy into the treaties brings about a gradual change in the way bioethics is understood. Indeed, the use of general and sector-specific bases places great emphasis not on the imperative of developing medical ethics as such, but on its implication for the achievement of common policies and the internal market. Health policies reverses this consideration because it inextricably links bioethics with the more general issue of protecting health over and above economic consideration. Gradually incorporated into the European treaties, the protection of public health has become a priority objective, both as a common policy and as a fundamental right under Article 35 of the Charter of the Fundamental Rights. In fact, at European Union level, this policy is traditionally aimed at protecting health. The definition of health itself is extremely broad, as set out in the Constitution of the World Health Organization. And this definition serves as a reference even in European Union law. According to this definition, health is defined, I'm quoting, as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Health protection is therefore not just a matter of setting up a healthcare system. It must also be based on a system of prevention and anticipation of damage to health. Consequently, at both European Union and national level, health protection is based on a multiplicity of policies. A very large number of European Union policies can have an impact on people's states of health, which can ultimately be seen as the implicit affirmation of an objective whereby all European Union policies and actions contribute to ensuring health protection. The existence of such an objective has, however, been progressively affirmed and clarified by the Court of Justice, since the original treaties made not reference to it, apart from the protection of the safety and health of workers or protection against radiation due to the risks of radioactive contamination. This case law can be systemized around two ideas. Firstly, health protection is seen as an economic activity through the prism of free movement. Secondly, the protection of public health is established as an imperative requirement in the general interest, authorizing member states to restrict freedom of movement on the grounds of safeguarding public health. The normative action of the European Union is consistent with the position of the Court of Justice on the protection of public health. This is considered an essential condition for justifying the approximation of national legislation on the marketing and the free movement of medicinal products. It was not until the Maastricht Treaty came into force that specific competence in the area of health was incorporated into the treaty. The Treaty of Amsterdam further encourages cooperation between the member states and the community and the European Union by allowing the latter to support their actions where necessary. The Treaty of Amsterdam also strengthens the possibility for the community to adopt binding measures to ensure a high level of safety under the Article 168, paragraph 4 of the Treaty of European Union. Under Article 35 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, everyone has the right of access to prevent care and the right to benefit from medical treatment under the conditions established by national laws and practices. A high level of human health protection shall be ensured in the definition and implementation of all Union policies and activities. This is based on both the precautionary principle, to which the Court of Justice referred in the context of the so-called mad-cow disease case, where public health was invoked as a justification for restricting certain economic rights, and the principle of prevention, as well as on human dignity and the ethical principles it implies. The Treaty of Lisbon reaffirms the priority of public health protection and its ability to influence all common policies. Article 6, point A of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union states that the protection and improvement of human health is an action with the European objective. The first subparagraph of Article 168 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union stresses that the high level of human health protection shall be ensured in the definition and implementation of all Union policies and activities. In addition to the more general aspect relating to health, this article brings bioethical concerns directly into the Union's normative action. Since paragraph 4 of this article specifies that the European Parliament and the Council, acting in accordance with the ordinary legislative procedure and after consulting the Economic and Social Committee at the Committee of the Regions, shall contribute to the achievement of the objectives referred in this article by adopting, in order to address common safety concerns, measures setting high standards of health and safety at work and in the exercise of their responsibilities, in particular with regard to the protection of human health. Measures setting high standards of quality and safety of organs and substances of human origin, blood and blood derivatives. These measures shall not prevent any member states from maintaining or introducing more stringent protective measures. Similarly, paragraph 4.c refers to measures setting high standards of quality and safety of medicinal products and devices for medical use. It also authorizes the European Union legislator, under the ordinary legislative procedure, to adopt measures binding on the member states in order to implement a high level of safety for the protection of human health. These possibilities was introduced by the Treaty of Amsterdam, which, in the wake of serious health crises, such as medical disease or, in France, contaminated blood, empowers the European Union institutions to set high standards of quality and safety for organs and substances of human origin, blood and blood derivatives. Indeed, there were two directives which were adopted on the basis of the Article 168 of the Treaty of Functioning on the European Union. This is the Directive 2002/98, which setting standards of quality and safety for the collection, testing, processing, storage, and distribution of human blood and blood components. And the second one is the Directive 2004/23 on setting standards of quality and safety for the donation, procurement, testing, processing, preservation, storage, and distribution of human tissues and cells. And these directives pursues the objective to fill the gaps in the European Union legislation on blood and blood-derived product, and also of human substances. As far as the donation of human tissues and cells is concerned, It has above all enabled the recommendation made by the European Group on Ethics on the urgent need to control the conditions for the circulations of human tissues on the European market to be put into practice. Referring expressly to the European Group's on Ethics opinion, the Commission based its proposals on 5 key ideas. The first of one, the ethical imperative of health safety. The second one, the integrity of the human body. The third one, prior, free, and informed consent. The fourth one, the protection of the identity. And the last one, anonymous and free tissue donation, a voluntary act of solidarity. This legal basis was also used to adopt Directive 2010/63 on standards of quality and safety of human organs, indeed for transplantation. Its justification was essentially based on the current shortage of organs, the imperative to strike a fair balance between two factors: the need to allow organ transplants, which is generally a matter of life and death on the one hand, and the need to ensure a high standard of quality and safety on the other. The completion of the internal market has been the striking revelation of the emergence of a European Union law on bioethics. Its particular dynamism has provided an original framework within which ethical issues have gradually come to the fore. In turns, they have gradually led to a renewal of the initial political aim of the European integration. And the Article 3 of the Treaty on European Union confirms that the completion of the internal market also has an axiological dimension founded on the common shared values. This protection of fundamental rights is now inherent in the freedom of movement on the basis of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. Recognition of the central role of the European citizens has also profoundly transformed the operation of the internal market rules. In these circumstances, ethical concerns are not foreign to the company on the grounds that they are not economic in nature. These concerns are not totally disconnected from economic activities, but they modify it because they also give it a different purpose. This ethical coloring of economic activity is strikingly apparent in the case law of the Court of Justice, which has been called upon to reconcile ethical principles with the exercise of freedom of movement. The emergence of bioethics in this context acts as a disruptive force. It mobilizes recourse to the register of freedom of movement of the internal market to highlight some of the issues at stake at the responses provided by European Union law with regard to both access to the market and at the exercise of the economic activities, where the human body and in its part are concerned. Bioethical issues have gradually come to the fore, almost exclusively in connection with human health issues. Thus, bioethical issues have been associated with barriers to free movement, particularly as regards the marketing of health products. The exponential development of the European Union action in favor of access to medical care will give another dimension to the ethical question. It will then be raised mainly in connection with the free movement of patients. So, do you have any question about the introduction of the connection of the bioethics in the European Union law? Everything is okay? Do you understand what I'm exactly mean? Do you have any
Yes.
question? Yes, everything is right? I will send you my notes of the courses, to Madame Kusharuk, and she will send you also, okay? We are going to have the written support of my courses. It will be better for you, I think. Do you understand the particularity of the European Union integration within the bioethicals? Bioethicals issues and the bioethicals concerns? Yeah, it's okay for you? Okay, so I will continue, and in the 10 minutes, I will give you a little break for 5 minutes. It will be okay? Okay, I will continue my flow. So, the ethical issues involved in the free movement of health project. The principle of the free movement of health project was recognized very early on. The Court of Justice classified health products as goods that could be freely placed on the market and consequently marketed. The concept of goods was given a broad interpretation encompassing all health products, including those derived from the human body. However, this free movement raised the problem of the potentially dangerous nature of this project for health. The member states did not hesitate to use the derogation provided for the treaties for the protection of public health to restrict to provide it for the protection of public health to restrict or even prevent it. Faced with this situation, the European Union legislator intervened with the aim of reconciling national disparities as regards the safety standards governing the manufacture of health products. In addition, it has made their free movement subject to prior authorization, which is granted following an in-depth study of the results of medical research into their safety. Ethical issues has also been indirectly addressed in the requirements for conducting critical trials prior to marketing health products. These requirements have also been strengthened for devices manufactured from animal tissues in order to eliminate or reduce as far as possible the risk of infection. Although the regulations relating to healthcare products for human use are highly developed and varied, they have in common the pursuit of the ethical imperative of health safety and the application of ethical requirements to the handling of healthcare products for human use. So, the ethical issues within the health safety for medical products and medicals is the ethical imperative of health safety. Is for the first time within the European Union integration, the bioethics could be defined through the ethical imperative of health safety. The ethical imperative of health safety is the main objective pursued in European regulations on health products for human use. Ever since the first directives on medicinal products for human use, this imperative has been targeted by a procedure for registering medicinal products and by the introduction of a marketing authorization procedure. Directive 2001/83, establishing the Community Code for Medicinal Products, confirms this choice while incorporating the ethical principles that must govern medical research. Indeed, Directive 1993/42 on medical devices referred to this when these devices were indissociable from a medicinal product. And nowadays, Regulation 2017/1745, which replaces, provides for a procedure for assessing the health risk of medical device. But it is in the context of legislation relating to health products derived from the human body that the ethical aspect of this health safety imperative has been particularly emphasized, as has the importance of high-level health standards. The requirements for a high standard of sanitary hygiene is part of the concern to establish a high level of public health protection. It is the expression of the right to receive treatment and care appropriated to one's state of health in the best possible condition in order to minimize the risk of transmission of infectious disease. The high quality health systems that has been set up is based on a number of elements that can be systematized around conditions relating to donors and the management of the quality of the nation. So, before introducing this point of my courses, I will give you 5 minutes of break, okay? Establishment of health policy, of health quality system. As far as blood regulations are concerned, as early as 1994, the Commission highlighted the need to impose such conditions. In its communication of 21 December 1994 on blood safety and self-sufficiency in the community, the Commission identified the need for a blood strategy aimed at strengthening confidence in the safety of the blood transfusion chain and promoting self-sufficiency in the community. The Council of the European Union adopted the same position in two resolutions on 2 June 1995 and 12 November 1996, which essentially aimed to highlight the need to guarantee the safety of blood transfusions and the implementation of a strategy to ensure such safety. In its resolutions on blood safety and achieving self-sufficiency in the community, the European Parliament in turn stressed the importance of ensuring the highest level of safety in the selection of donors and the testing of donations, as well as respect for the principle of voluntary unpaid donation. The Council, in its recommendation on 29 June 1998 on the eligibility of blood donors and plasma and the screening of blood donations in the European community, drew up a whole list of measures that will be desirable within the framework of European regulations. Among these measures, the Council first emphasizes the importance of informing prospective donors of the risk that the poor quality donation could have on the transmission of infections such as AIDS. In this respect, the Council recommended that donors be made aware of such risks and that the information provided by the donor be guaranteed in terms of confidentiality and protection of personal data. Secondly, the Council emphasizes the importance of the information to be requested from the prospective donor. More specifically, this concerns information relating to the donor's identity and medical history. Third, for donor eligibility, the Council recommended that the questionnaires be set up in competent institutions to allow donors to be eligible on a case-by-case basis. The establishment of a list for the exclusion of candidates for donation with the reason they justified. The Council also recommended that blood and blood products be tested unannounced to avoid any risk of disease transmission during blood transfusion. Indeed, under the Directive 2002/98, these recommendations are taken into account, and the directive gives them a binding legal basis in that the member states are obliged to provide national transposition measures which allow for the quality and safety of blood and blood components. The same way, Directive 2004/33 complements these requirements. Indeed, the Annex 2 of the directive specifies that the precise information that national authority must obtain from donors, particularly with regard to their state of health. In the field of human tissues and cell donation, donor conditions are considered by the European Group on Ethics as an ethical imperative for health safety. This ethical imperative of health safety is reflected in the implementation of adequate information regarding the risk involved, as well as on the need to obtain information from donors concerning their medical history and to proceed, if necessary, extensive biological analysis. Chapter 3 of the Directive 2004/23 incorporates these requirements because it sets out the principle of voluntary and unpaid donation, donor consent, data protection and confidentiality and criteria for selection, evaluation and receipt of donation. And the Directive 2006/17 specifies these requirements, in particular its Annex 1, which specifies the criteria for the selection of donors. The same concerns are found in Directive 2010/553 on organ donation for human transplantation. All of these directives also deal with organ donation from deceased persons. However, they refer to national legislation to determine the condition under which such a gift must be collected, particularly with regard to the consent of the person before his death or that of his family and the possibility of opposing it. Thus, the European Union legislator leaves it to the member states to decide on this ethical debate. It therefore merely clarifies the procedural framework for the collection, storage, and exchange of donations between member states. The counterpart to the strengthening of these requirements is the need to protect the donor, since the information collected has a personal character. Thus, as we shall see, the obligation to protect such data is enshrined in secondary legislation. The regime in the European Union has also evolved and will certainly continue to do so, given the new challenges of the active role of the patient and sharing of medical data. The second point of this important ethical imperative of health safety is, of course, the management of the quality of donations. The management of the quality of donation appears as an essential condition for a system of sanitary quality in respect of blood and human tissues and cells. This donation quality management system has two main features. First, this management system is characterized by the institutionalization of a specialized administrative framework for the collection and storage of this human project. Thus, Article 5 of the Directive 2002/1998 on blood explicitly states that donation must be made within and by competent institutions. They are authorized or licensed to collect and test human blood and blood components. Chapter 3 of the same directive contains provisions relating to blood establishment, which concern the responsible person and the staff of those establishments in terms of the specific professional qualification required in this respect. Directive 2005/62 complements these requirements by determining the standards and specifications that each institution must implement. Similar requirements are laid down in Directive 2004/23 on the donation of human tissues and cells. Chapter 4 of the directive establishes such a system based on both the professional qualification of the person responsible and the specialization of establishments for the collection and storage of the donation. The same requirements are found in Directive 2010/53 on organ donation for transplantation. And the Directive 2002/98 and 2004/24 and 23, will be replaced by the new regulation, which came into force last summer, but will be applicable in 2027 in 2 years. And this new regulation reinforces the requirements concerning the management, the quality of donation, but also gives some substantive content of the European Union, legal system, legal system about the donation of human substance. Secondly, this management system is characterized by the obligation for member states to implement principle of good practice. These practices are essentially intended to make available detailed information on the practice of collection and donation. These elements may include validated procedures, guidelines, training and reference manuals, reporting forms, donor data, and information on the final destination of tissues or cells. As regards the quality management of donations, member states must be able to ensure the traceability of donations, in particular by establishing a system for identifying donor. Thus, in the field of blood and blood product, Directive 2005/61 supplements the traceability requirements and above all provides for the creation of a system for reporting and investigating serious reaction or incidents concerning collection and or storage. As regards traceability, which becomes the key element of the system, Article 2 of this directive specifies that member states must put in place appropriate identification procedures. More specifically, it is the implementation of a system of identification specific to each donor and each establishment that will allow, in case of blood transfusion, to establish clearly the link between the establishment and the blood product used. Similarly, Article 7 of the directive obliges states to ensure that when blood or derived products are imported, foreign establishments have such a traceability system. As regards the notification of accidents, Article 5 of the directive obliges states to put in place an internal system for reporting. These member states must also submit an annual report to the Commission and above all give priority to administrative cooperation between the competent national authorities of other member states. The very comprehensive and binding system introduced by Directive 2002/98 even led the Court of Justice to specify that these collection and storage obligations applied to any blood product, plasma, whereas the latter was covered by Directive 2001/83 since its amendment in 2004. In its judgment in Octopharma, France, the Court of Justice clearly held that even if the medicinal product regulation applied to plasma, its collection and storage were subject to the requirements of Directive 2002/98, and that the distinction should be made between the sampling stage and the industrial handling stage. Directive 2004/23 on the donation of human tissues and cells also provides for such an identification system. Chapter 5 also calls on the Commission to set up a European codification system. Directive 2006/86 gives concrete form to this system, in particular with regard to the traceability and incident reporting requirements. Similar requirements are laid down in Directive 2010/53 on organ donation for transplantation. These requirements were supplemented by Directive 2012/25, whose Articles 6 and 7 determine how member states must ensure the traceability of the donation and put in place procedures for reporting incidents. These procedures are based on the same model as that established under the blood and tissue directives. The importance of this system for managing the quality of donation was recalled by the court in its judgment on the case of Commission against Poland. In the present case, Poland has excluded from its national major provisions transposing Directive 2004/23 and its implementing directives the collection and storage of reproductive cells, fetal tissues, and embryonic tissues, in order to retain the failure of Poland to transpose the European system. The court adopted a two-stage reasoning. First, she recalled that these directives take as a whole aim to ensure a high level of protection of public health, insofar as they are intended to establish a unified framework for ensuring high standards of quality and safety with regards to the production, the control, processing, storage, and distribution of human tissues and cells, in particular to prevent disease transmission. Therefore, it confirmed that only binding acts of a legislative or regulatory nature were likely to correctly transpose the high quality system established by the directives. In this case, by referring to not binding acts and guidelines with recommendatory scope for this type of cells and tissues, Poland has failed to comply with its obligation to transpose the directive. Secondary legislation also stressed the need to ensure effective health safety control. The aim is for member states to allow the implementation of controls by means of health inspections in order to ensure, on the one hand, that the competent establishments actually meet the conditions for issuing an authorization to proceed with the collection and storage of the donation, and if necessary, withdraw the authorization of license from them. And on the other hand, that the collection and storage of the donation are carried out under the condition provided for by secondary legislation. In particular, with regard to the requirements relating to the donor and the management of the quality of the donation. In this respect, the Commission adopted on 3rd August 2010 a decision guidelines for the detailed rules of inspections and control measures pursuant to Directive 2004/23. The guidelines, which are annexed to the decision, cover on the one hand the training of inspectors and their responsibility, and on the other hand, the conduct of inspection themselves. Ethical principles must also be respected when handling human health projects. So I will continue next week about this point, this point of my courses. So it will be okay for today. Do you have any questions about my courses for today? Do you have any questions, remarks? Everything is okay? So I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.